Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. From pariah to priority, that's the story of America's ties with Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump's predecessor kept the kingdom at a distance, but Trump is going all in. The fist bumps are gone, the handshakes and hugs are in. Tonight, we'll bring you the 5 takeaways from Trump's meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Also, what does this reset mean for India and the world? Meanwhile, US markets continue to bleed. We'll take a closer look at the AI bubble driving it. Also on the show, how did China spread lies about Operation Sindoor? What is Trump's new plan to end the Ukraine war? Why has the Taliban sent another minister to India? How companies are selling you poison in the form of food? And finally, we look at a debate that is raging in India. What is the right age to marry? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. The UK government warns the Kremlin after it claimed that a Russian military ship had entered British waters. London says the ship also directed lasers at its military pilots. This is the second such instance this year. The earlier incursion reportedly took place in January. In Nigeria, gunmen kill at least 2 people in an attack on a church. This comes amid claims by Donald Trump that Christians are being persecuted in the West African country. The US president has threatened military action over it. Nigeria is divided between a predominantly Christian south and a Muslim majority north. In India, Nitish Kumar set to begin a new term as Bihar's chief minister. He will take oath tomorrow for a record 10th time. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Union Home Minister Amit Shah are likely to attend the ceremony. The ruling alliance won the recently concluded assembly election with a landslide margin. A South Korean ferry carrying more than 250 people runs aground on an uninhabited island. The incident took place off the country's southwest coast. Rescue operations are underway to save the passengers and the crew. In 2014, a ferry capsized off the same coast, killing more than 300 people. And a volcano on Indonesia's main island of Java erupts, throwing ash kilometers into the sky. Officials have raised the alert status to its highest level. The same volcano, which is near Bali, had erupted in 2021, killing more than 50 people.
Murder of a journalist.
Fake news. ABC fake news. Saudi Arabia is a major non-NATO ally. We had a big day today. And because he's my friend, he might make it $1 trillion.
It was a big day for Donald Trump. He was hosting the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, on his first visit to the United States in 7 years. They've had a special relationship. When Trump became president for the first time, his first foreign trip was to Riyadh. When he became president for the second time, his first foreign trip was again to Riyadh. It shows his love for the kingdom. So when MBS came visiting, Trump was determined to make it a moment. The White House not only rolled out the red carpet, it put on a full-blown show. Marching bands in perfect formation, horses trotting with giant star-spangled flags, cameras flashing like it was Oscar night. All of it for one man, Mohammed bin Salman. Take a look at this. The camaraderie was impossible to miss. The handshakes kept coming. The smiles wouldn't stop. They even slipped in a few jokes, light and easy, like old friends. MBS got the VVIP treatment, a private tour of the Presidential Wall of Fame by the President himself.
extremely respected man in the Oval Office today, and a friend of mine for a long time, a very good friend of mine. And I'm very proud of the job he's done. What he's done is incredible in terms of human rights and everything else. And he's the Crown Prince, the future king.
So what were the big takeaways from this visit? Let's break it down. First, a designation change for Saudi Arabia. It is now a major non-NATO ally for the US. Trump made this announcement during the dinner. Currently, 19 countries are major non-NATO allies for the United States, 19 countries, including Pakistan. Saudi Arabia is the 20th on the list. It is a symbolic move for sure, but it's also a powerful sign. The US sees Saudi Arabia as a critical security partner.
And I'm pleased to announce that we're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is very important to them. And I'm just telling you now for the first time because I wanted to keep a little secret for tonight.
They also signed a defense deal. The full details are not out, but here's what we can confirm. Saudi Arabia is getting F-35 fighter jets. Trump had already announced it, and with this deal, it looks like Riyadh is finally getting the jets. They'd asked for 48 jets. It remains to be seen how many they get. Takeaway number 2 is investments. That's what this trip was about, money and projects. Riyadh is set to invest $600 billion in the United States. It will create jobs and more resources for US companies, but Trump says it could go up to $1 trillion.
Today and tomorrow we're going to announce that we are going to increase that $600 billion to almost $1 trillion of investment, real investment and real opportunity by details in many areas. And the agreement that we are signing today in many areas in technology, in AI, in earth materials, magnet, etc., that will create a lot of investment opportunities.
So you are doing that now. You're saying to me now that the $600 billion will be $1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing, it will facilitate that. And
I like that very much.
Takeaway number 3, Saudi Arabia will not recognize Israel. They don't have formal diplomatic ties, Saudi Arabia and Israel. They do not recognize each other. Trump has been trying to change that. Last time he was president, he got 4 Muslim countries to recognize Israel through a deal that's called the Abraham Accords. He wants Saudi Arabia to be next, but the Saudis are not joining the Abraham Accords anytime soon. Trump said they had a good conversation on Israel. MBS hinted at progress, but there's no deal. And this was expected. With the war in Gaza, it's impossible for Riyadh to ditch Palestine and normalize ties with Israel. The Saudi Crown Prince has been very clear about this. He says there should be a real path to Palestinian statehood. Only then will they recognize Israel.
Are you going to bring up the Abraham Accords in your discussion?
I already brought them up.
What did you say?
I think I got a positive response. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so
I'll put you on the spot.
yes.
I think we're, I don't want to use the word commitment, but we've had a very good talk on the Abraham Accords. We talked about 1 state, 2 state. We talked about a lot of things in a short period of time.
Which brings us to takeaway number 4, Jamal Khashoggi. He was a Saudi dissident. In 2018, he was killed in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. Reports say MBS ordered that killing. Western powers shunned him. They turned him into a pariah, but Donald Trump did not care. He defended the Saudi Crown Prince in his first term, and he defended him yesterday.
Appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while you're president, is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office.
Who are you with?
Why should Americans trust
Who are you with? No, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst. One of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question.
Yes, everyone needs a friend like Donald Trump who stands by through thick and thin. Technically, the Saudis never abandoned him too. They stood by him even when he was not the president, with investments and projects that kept coming Trump's way. And it wasn't just Trump who replied to that reporter's question at the White House. MBS too had something to say.
Please go.
You allow me to answer. I feel painful about the families of 9/11 in America, but we have to focus on reality. Reality based on CIA documents and based on a lot of documents that Osama bin Laden, he used Saudi people in that event for one main purpose, is to destroy this relation, to destroy the American-Saudi relation. About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or not in a legal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia. We've did all the right steps of investigation, etc. in Saudi Arabia, and we've improved our system to be sure that nothing happened like that, and it's painful and it's a huge mistake.
Which brings us to the last takeaway, and this one is not about the deals or the investment, this is about the camaraderie. Trump clearly likes MBS, and he did not hide the fact at all.
Who was the best president for Saudi Arabia? And you could maybe, it's an interesting answer. I don't know.
The Roosevelt, who started it, which is a Democrat, and Reagan, he's one of the historical presidents that have close ties with Saudi Arabia. But we've worked with all presidents.
Does Trump blow them all away?
No, it's another league, Mr. President.
That's classic Donald Trump for you. MBS returned the favor at the grand dinner. He thanked Donald Trump for the welcome. He called it a special day. And how people were betting on him wearing a suit.
And also, before I come here, someone told me that there is in some of the bidding sites that they are bidding on me wearing black suits. And if you bid on me wearing black suits, I'm coming here with the black suits, they're going to get almost 17x. So I want to tell them, sorry, you lose the bet. Maybe next time. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
It wasn't just Trump and MBS who made news. There were two other men who stole the headlines. The first was Elon Musk, Trump's BFF turned critic turned cautious supporter again. Musk was at the White House dinner. Trump even tapped his arm when he saw him. So is the bromance back? Well, not so soon. This is at best a thaw. The second person is Cristiano Ronaldo. He plays for the Saudi National League, so he was present at the dinner yesterday. In fact, he took a selfie that is breaking the internet. Basically, this was much more than a state visit. This was a show of power, a show of friendship, and a show of how much the world has changed since 2018. This is a crown prince once shunned by the West. He now gets a red carpet parade in Washington. And between the deals, the designations, the dinner and the selfies, one thing stood out. This relationship is no longer about just oil or weapons or even geopolitics. It's about two men who see the world in a similar way and who are betting that together they can shape the next decade.
Signing a historic strategic defense agreement, which we just signed a little while ago. So congratulations. It's out there.
So the US and Saudi Arabia are warming up. You can forget the freeze under Joe Biden. It's now full steam ahead. And what does that mean for the rest of the world? Also, how should India see this reset? For the world, two things matter. First is the impact on the energy market. The US is the largest oil producer in the world. They've held this position since 2018, and Saudi Arabia is the second largest producer. Put together, the US and Saudi Arabia pump out around 32% of the global output, meaning they can influence our oil prices. Until recently, the US and Saudi Arabia disagreed on oil production. Former President Joe Biden wanted to increase output, but Crown Prince MBS disagreed. Under Donald Trump, that may not happen. And we saw a glimpse of that in April this year. Out of nowhere, Saudi Arabia increased its oil production. So naturally, global prices fell. A few weeks later, it became clear why they did it. Because Trump had decided to visit Riyadh for his first bilateral trip as president. And that is the first outcome of this reset, more cooperation on oil. Secondly, it signals more US commitment to West Asia, which is a bit confusing, by the way, because in the last decade, Washington announced its big pivot. It promised to reduce its presence in West Asia and to focus more on the Indo-Pacific. That's what the Americans decided to do. Trump himself championed that cause. He talked about stopping the endless wars in West Asia. But his recent actions signal a change. First, he deployed the US military against Iran. Then he signed a mutual defense deal with Qatar. Basically, he promised to defend Qatar if attacked. And now he's upgraded his ties with Saudi Arabia. All of this signals renewed American interest in the region. Which brings us to the second question. What does this mean for India? Well, there's a good part and a bad part. The good part is this. India has close strategic ties with both the US and Saudi Arabia. We have an ambitious plan for West Asia. It's called the IMEC, the India Middle East Economic Corridor. This corridor connects India to Europe, and it goes directly via Saudi Arabia. The US is a key partner in this project. They will bring the technology and the political clout. So good US-Saudi ties are crucial to completing this project, the IMEC. If their ties are not good, the project may get cancelled. And it's not just IMEC. The US is a key part of India's West Asian engagement too. Just consider the I2U2. It has 4 member countries: Israel, India, the UAE, and the United States. This group is focused on commercial and technological cooperation in West Asia. So my point is quite simple. Closer US-Arab cooperation would not hurt India. In fact, it has multiple benefits for us. But there's a flip side too, that features Pakistan. Israel's war has shaken up West Asian security. In the last 2 years, they attacked 5 Muslim countries. Israel attacked 5 countries: Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Iran, and Qatar. Of course, all these countries are now worried. Other countries in the region are also worried. They want someone to guarantee their safety. Enter Pakistan. Islamabad has capitalized on this crisis. They are flaunting their position as the only Islamic nuclear country. And Arab leaders are buying it. In September, Saudi Arabia signed a mutual defense treaty with Pakistan. The text sounds a lot like NATO. This is what the treaty says, and I'm quoting: "Any aggression against either country shall be considered an aggression against both." Some say Pakistan will use its nukes to defend Riyadh. So do you see the emerging trend? Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are deepening ties. Pakistan and the US are deepening ties, and Saudi Arabia and the US are also deepening ties. It's almost like a new regional trio. We're seeing Pakistan and Saudi Arabia come under the same US umbrella. They're both wooing Donald Trump with deals. They're both major non-NATO allies. They're both seeking top US weapons, and they've both just turned around their ties with Washington. So will this new nexus worry India? Not yet. But there is one key aspect to watch out for, and that is hyphenation. In recent years, both the US and Saudi Arabia have de-hyphenated India and Pakistan. What does that mean? It means the relations stand on their own merit. You deal with India alone and you deal with Pakistan alone. If that changes, then it should worry India. We've seen Trump flirt with some hyphenated language. We'll have to wait and see if Saudi Arabia does the same. Now let's talk about the bear run in American markets. It's getting worse. US stocks have been bleeding. We discussed it yesterday. One of the big reasons for this bleed is the growing fear of an AI bubble, the fear that AI stocks are overhyped, that there will be a crash, and that investors will lose big money. That concern is growing. Let's break it down for you. Yesterday, Dow Jones was down by more than 1%. The sell-off wiped nearly 500 points off the index. The S&P 500 also fell for a 4th straight session. It fell by nearly 1%. This is the longest slide in 3 months. And leading the slide was big tech. Nvidia dropped nearly 3%, Microsoft another 3%, and Amazon slid by more than 4%. And this came amid a big announcement, by the way. Yesterday, 3 companies announced a big deal: Nvidia, Microsoft, and Anthropic. They announced a $30 billion strategic partnership, $30 billion. Under normal circumstances, it would have been good news and it would have pushed up stock prices. But in this case, the opposite happened. Investors continued selling because they fear that the hype around AI is too much. There's a growing worry that AI stocks are overheating, meaning they're rising too fast, too high, and way beyond what real profits can justify. The Bank of America conducted a survey. It spoke to 172 global fund managers. They were asked one simple question: what is the biggest risk to markets today? That was the question. And guess what? 45% of them said it's the AI bubble. The AI bubble is the biggest risk to markets today. 45% fund managers say that. Last month, 33% held this view. And they're not just expressing concern, they're also acting on it. They're reallocating investments in the US market. They're pulling money away from tech stocks. Allocations to tech companies have hit a 6-month low. So where is the money going? If they're pulling it out of tech, where are they investing? They're investing in sectors like healthcare, banking, and consumer staples. Those investments are rising. That's a sign of a shifting market sentiment. And it's not just about valuations or pricing. Investors are looking at fundamentals. Here's what they're worried about: capital expenditure on AI. What does that mean? The spending on long-term assets. And what are those long-term assets for AI and tech companies? What is their capital expenditure? It's spending on computer hardware like chips, data centers and infrastructure, and electrical systems. Basically, any money spent on building infrastructure that you need to scale up AI models. Investors are now worried about this expense. Fund managers say companies are quote-unquote over-investing. Bank of America calls it the hyperscaler problem, meaning there is too much cash, too much infrastructure, and companies are scaling up too fast. Tech firms are pouring billions into AI, but the returns are still unclear. This is especially true for 3 kinds of companies: chip makers, providers of cloud computing, and startups riding the AI wave. Investors are worried about the return on this investment. When will all this spending pay off? That's the question they're asking. And that is why experts are calling it an AI bubble. So what happens next? How and when could this AI bubble burst? There are 3 possible scenarios. First, if the earnings disappoint, if companies like Nvidia fail to deliver, if their profits fall short, if growth slows or profit margins shrink, then it will deflate the hype. The second scenario is a demand mismatch. AI chips are at the center of this boom. Every company scaling AI needs special chips. But those chips come at a cost. They're expensive to make, even more expensive to buy. For now, their demand is strong, but what happens if the demand drops? What if supply outpaces demand? A glut of chips could drive prices down, and that would hit a company's bottom line hard, especially for chip makers banking on the promise of expansion. It would signal the end of the AI bull run. That's the second scenario. Third scenario, if innovation starts to slow. So far, we've seen rapid progress, but every new model is delivering smaller upgrades. They have smarter prompts, they have faster outputs, but they have no major breakthroughs. Meanwhile, expectations are still rising. AI was sold as revolutionary technology, a force that will transform everything. It was supposed to automate jobs, reshape entire industries, replace humans. That has not happened yet. Yes, there is disruption in the job market, but it's not as bad or as wide as was feared. Basically, there is no big leap that justifies the trillion-dollar valuations. If progress stalls, or if the pace of development slows, investors will start to question the hype. Because this is what makes this bubble different. It is built on a belief, a thought, that AI will transform the world and pay off massively. But belief does not balance company books. When the numbers do not add up, the sentiment shifts. Yes, the AI boom has delivered real gains. It has pushed markets to record highs. It has created massive momentum. But the danger now lies in the expectation. If results disappoint even slightly, the bubble will begin to deflate. For all you know, that's already happening. What is China's most lethal weapon? You may be thinking about jets like the J-35 or warships like the Fujian, but none of them has ever seen battleground action. Guess which Chinese weapon has? Propaganda. They've used it repeatedly, and they did it this summer too during the India-Pakistan conflict. A new US report reveals how. It's a report by the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Every year, this commission prepares a report. It is meant for the US Congress. It is supposed to shape their policies on China. And look at their findings this year. I'm quoting. Following the May 2025 India-Pakistan border crisis, China initiated a disinformation campaign to hinder sales of French Rafale aircraft in favor of its own J-35s. Using fake social media accounts to propagate AI images of supposed debris from the planes that China's weaponry destroyed. Some background now. Pakistan mostly used Chinese weapons against India, jets like the J-10C and missiles like the PL-15. It was a combat debut for all these weapons. None of them had ever seen war. Pakistan was the first to use them. It's the first time that the world saw these weapons in action. So all eyes were on the Chinese weapons. Would they pass with flying colors? Would they crash and burn? The world was watching. Now, according to Pakistan, the weapons performed well. They claimed that the Chinese weapons shot down 6 Indian jets. 6 Indian jets, including the French-made Rafales. Pakistan says they shot them down using Chinese weapons. Now, India has not confirmed this. Top Indian officials did admit some losses in May, but they've not specified what those losses were. How many jets or what kind, India has not specified. This led to confusion and speculation, and China capitalized on this confusion. It spread fake news about India's Rafale jets. Why? To make their own planes look good. Again, let me quote from the US report. This is what it says. In the weeks after the conflict, Chinese embassies hailed the successes of their systems in the India-Pakistan clash, seeking to bolster weapons sales. Pakistan's use of Chinese weapons to down French Rafale fighter jets used by India also became a particular selling point for Chinese embassy defense sales efforts. So the campaign had 2 steps. First was misinformation. China set up multiple fake accounts on social media. They used AI and video game clips to push their lies around the Rafale jets. That was the first step. Then came step 2. China used this propaganda to woo potential buyers. They told them, look, our missiles downed the Indian Rafale, so don't buy these French planes. Instead, buy ours. Buy the Chinese J-35s. That's what China told potential buyers. It used the same strategy with Indonesia. Beijing tried to block Jakarta's purchase of 42 Rafale jets. That deal is still on track, but Indonesia is looking at Chinese planes too, specifically the J-10C fighters, the same planes that Pakistan used against India. Indonesia is considering them. Is this coincidence? I don't think so. The US report also gives its assessment on what happened in May. They say, the Americans are saying, that India lost 3 jets, not 6. And all of them may not have been Rafales. Like I said, India has not detailed its losses. So as things stand, This is just an assessment. The question is, what should we take away from these findings? Frankly, it's not earth-shattering. Of course, China ran a disinformation campaign against India. Of course, they pushed their planes over Rafales. That is not surprising at all. What is worrying is the scale and intent behind their cyber campaign. It's a wake-up call for the Indian establishment. Why couldn't we fight this disinformation in May? Why couldn't we flag it in a detailed report? Why should we rely on French and US government reports? All of this traces back to a digital strategy. You need to communicate your victories better. You need to call out misinformation because China is not stopping with this episode. Just think about it. China was not even directly involved in this conflict. Yet they flooded social media with lies about India. That is the scale that you're dealing with. You can't wait around for China to change its ways. You must develop your own ways to deal with China. Now to the latest on the war in Ukraine. A secret mission is on. A secret mission that involves Russia and the United States. Reports say they're talking again. Behind the scenes, not in public, not through formal diplomatic tracks, but through private meetings and closed-door discussions. A new roadmap is being drafted, a roadmap to end the war in Ukraine. The plan aims to set out security guarantees, address Europe's security issues, and redefine how the US deals with Russia and Ukraine. Reports say Ukrainian officials have been briefed about this, and European governments are also being informed. The details are still limited, but the back-channel activity suggests a new diplomatic phase may be opening. Here's a report.
A major diplomatic shift may be underway in the Ukraine war. The United States and Russia are reportedly working together on a secret plan. The new plan aims to end the war in Eastern Europe. It is not happening in public. It is not happening through formal channels, but it is happening in private rooms, in long conversations, and through back-and-forth messages between officials. At the center of this effort is reportedly a 28-point roadmap. It mirrors the structure of the recent Gaza ceasefire plan, and it is reportedly built around 4 general areas: peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, security in Europe, and the future of US relations with both Russia and Ukraine. The drafting is being led by US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He has reportedly discussed the proposal extensively with a Russian envoy. The Russian envoy allegedly spent 3 days in Miami in late October. And he says that this time, Moscow feels its position is being taken seriously. Reports also suggest Ukraine is already aware of the plan. Witkoff met President Zelensky's national security advisor earlier this week in Miami. Witkoff was expected to meet President Zelensky in Turkey today, but reports suggest he has postponed that visit for now. Meanwhile, European governments are also reportedly being briefed. US officials say the document is still evolving. They say could be adjusted based on what Ukraine and Europe want. And they believe the timing may allow for a fresh attempt at negotiations. But what remains unclear is the most sensitive point. How will the plan handle the territories in eastern Ukraine? Russian forces have been advancing there, but they still control far less land than Moscow demands. And this unresolved question has blocked every previous effort at peace. Still, Russia's public response has been cautious. The Kremlin has declined to comment on the report. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov says there are no new developments beyond what Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin discussed in Alaska in August. Moscow's official terms also remain unchanged. Ukraine must step back from its NATO ambitions and withdraw from the 4 regions Russia claims: Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia. All this comes at a time when the fighting has intensified in Ukraine. Earlier today, a Russian strike on the western city of Ternopil killed at least 20 people. Dozens were injured. The attack came hours before Zelensky traveled to Turkey. He said the strike showed that pressure on Russia is still insufficient. Ukraine says the goal now is to draw the United States back into active peace efforts. They believe Washington is the only power that can push Moscow towards real negotiations. For now, the 28-point roadmap exists only as a draft. There is no public text, no confirmed timeline, and no new date for the next Trump-Putin meeting after the Budapest summit was paused. But the channels are open again, and the world is watching closely.
A Taliban minister is visiting India. Don't worry, this is not some old news video from last month. This is from today. It's the second ministerial visit by the Taliban regime. The first was their foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi. He visited in October. He came to New Delhi in October. And now the Taliban's commerce minister is visiting. His name is Alhaj Nuruddin Azizi. He landed in New Delhi earlier today, and the Indian government extended him a warm welcome. You wouldn't or you couldn't have imagined this a few years ago. 2 Taliban ministers, 2 months and 2 trips to India. So what is cooking? The first visit was all about political signaling, sort of like a green light for engagement. This visit is all about business. The Taliban minister will be in India for 5 days. He will meet India's commerce and foreign ministers. He is also expected to meet Indian traders and investors. And his mission, let me quote from the Taliban statement on what the mission is. These meetings will focus on expanding economic cooperation, facilitating trade relations, creating joint investment opportunities, and strengthening Afghanistan's role in regional transit routes. That last part is very important, transit routes. You see, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. They have depended on Pakistani ports to access the sea. But recently, that access has gone. The Taliban and Pakistan are fighting. They're clashing repeatedly at the border. Dozens of fighters have been killed on both sides. We'll come to that in a bit. But the point here is this: Afghanistan cannot trade with Pakistan anymore. Enter India. New Delhi operates a terminal in Iran at the Chabahar port. It's an arrangement that benefits both sides, India and Afghanistan. Because through this port, through Chabahar, the Taliban can access the sea via Iran and India can access Central Asia via Afghanistan. Basically, we can cut out Pakistan. And that's one of the main agendas of this trip. Beyond that, there will be talks on investments. Afghanistan is said to have resources worth $1 trillion. They have 2.2 billion tons of iron ore, around 1.3 billion tons of marble, and 1.4 million tons of rare earths. The problem is the Taliban cannot extract any of it. You need money and technology to mine resources, and Kabul has neither. They're hoping that regional powers can step in. China has signed contracts to mine gold and copper, but most of their projects have not taken off. Do you know why? Because of security. You need a large ground presence for mining operations. We're talking about machinery and people. You need all of it. But will they be safe in Afghanistan? Will the Taliban be able to protect them? That's the worry for investors. Chances are India will have the same worries. We may sign deals to explore mining opportunities, but actual progress may take time. Which brings us to the larger political picture. This visit comes amid a growing rift, a conflict between the Taliban and Pakistan. Pakistan accuses the Taliban of shielding the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, better known as the Pakistani Taliban. This is a group, the TTP, that seeks to topple the regime in Islamabad. Pakistan says Kabul supports this group. Kabul, of course, denies this charge. Nonetheless, it has become a major flashpoint. We have seen multiple rounds of fighting. Scores of people have been killed on both sides. As things stand, there is a truce in place, but peace appears unlikely. Pakistan and the Taliban have held talks in Qatar and Turkey, but there's no breakthrough. So to recap, ties between Kabul and Islamabad are deteriorating. They're exchanging threats and gunfire. And in that backdrop, a Taliban minister is visiting India. The strategic thinking is quite clear. Your enemy's enemy is your friend, if not a friend, at least not an enemy. Now to the latest flashpoint in Asia. It's China versus Japan. They are locked in a diplomatic row over Taiwan, and the latest casualty is seafood. China says there is no market for Japanese fish. They've informally banned Japan's seafood. They're also targeting tourism. Beijing is telling Chinese citizens to not travel to Japan. Tour operators in Tokyo are reporting mass cancellations. This means serious loss of business. And you know how this started? With one comment from Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. She was speaking in Parliament. She was asked a simple question: what happens if China attacks Taiwan? What will happen? Will there be a military response from Tokyo? She said there may be. And Beijing blew off its lid. Our next report has more.
China has fired a fresh warning at Japan. This time, it's not about warplanes or missiles. It's about seafood. Beijing says there's no market for Japanese fish in China. The reason is Taiwan. And a sharp comment by Japan's Prime Minister. It has triggered a full-scale diplomatic row. It started in Japan's parliament. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi was asked about Taiwan. She said a Chinese attack on the island would threaten Japan's survival. That means Tokyo could respond militarily.
If China were to deploy battleships and involve the use of force, I believe this could be deemed a situation threatening Japan's survival.
Beijing calls that a red line. Now, it's threatening to hit back, economically. At a press briefing, China's foreign ministry made it clear, even if Japan sends seafood, it won't sell in the Chinese markets.
I would also like to emphasize that the recent wrongful remarks made by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi on significant issues, such as Taiwan, have sparked strong public anger among Chinese citizens. Under the current circumstances, even if Japanese aquatic products were to be exported to China, there would be no market for them here.
The message was aimed directly at Tokyo. China wants the Prime Minister's remarks on Taiwan retracted. If not, more measures could follow. The ban on seafood is not official yet. Japanese media says China has already informed Tokyo of a possible ban. But the threat alone is enough to rattle businesses, because it's not the first time. Back in 2023, China banned Japanese seafood. That was over treated wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant. Beijing only resumed imports this year. Now the spat over Taiwan could bring another ban. Seafood isn't the only target. Last week, Beijing warned its citizens not to travel to Japan. It's not an official ban. But the effect is real. Between January and September this year, 7.5 million Chinese tourists visited Japan. Now, airlines are offering refunds. Flights are being rescheduled. And tourism businesses in Japan are feeling the heat. The backlash has started. Tour operators in Japan are reporting cancellations. One Tokyo-based company says it lost 70% of bookings for the rest of the year. They rely heavily on Chinese tour groups, and they're worried. A short disruption is manageable, but if the spat drags on, the financial strain could grow. This isn't just a fight over fish. It's about geopolitics and how countries talk about Taiwan. Japan took a tougher stance than usual. China is responding with economic pressure. No missiles, no warships. Beijing's retaliation involves markets, flights, and tourism. The message to Tokyo is loud and clear. Talk about Taiwan, and China will make you pay.
For our next story, let me begin with a hard truth. A truth that should worry you more than any other headline tonight. The products you keep in your kitchen, the packets you buy from your grocery store, may not be real food. In fact, a lot of it may be closer to poison for you. Poison that big food companies are profiting from. Says who? One of the world's most respected medical journals. It's called The Lancet. It says we are eating ultra-processed food and too much of it, so much so that it's become a global health threat. And while consumers poison their bodies, food companies or food mafia are making massive profits. First things first, what is ultra-processed food? And why is it dangerous for you? Ultra-processed foods are foods that are not made in kitchens. They're made in factories. They start as cheap crops like maize, wheat, soy, palm oil. Companies break them down into powders, pastes and syrups. They then mix additives, colors, flavors, sweeteners, preservatives. These additives change the taste, texture and the look, and then they're sold to you as noodles, chips, biscuits and packaged snacks. These are all ultra-processed foods. They're tasty, cheap and addictive. And that is why they're everywhere. They fill supermarkets, they fill your kitchen, and they cause diseases. That list is long, by the way. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, depression, in some cases even early death. This is what ultra-processed food can do to you. Now, these findings come from a massive review of studies, and they reveal a trend. These foods are slowly displacing your traditional meals. They're making you overeat. And the trend is global. Take, for example, the US, the UK and Australia. In these countries, more than half of all daily calories come from ultra-processed foods. And this is where the story becomes sinister. The rise of ultra-processed food is not accidental. It is engineered by the food mafia, a small group of companies that dominate the market. Names like Nestle, PepsiCo, Unilever, Coca-Cola have all been mentioned. These companies have made enormous profits from such products. Between 1962 and 2021, food corporations paid $2.9 trillion to their shareholders, $2.9 trillion. And more than half of that money came from ultra-processed food. Let me put that in simpler words. For over 6 decades, the most profitable products in the global food industry were not fresh foods, but ultra-processed foods, and that kind of money creates power. Power to influence markets, power to slow down any rule that threatens profits. And to keep that power, these companies follow a certain strategy. A playbook that we've seen before in the tobacco industry, or what they call big tobacco. They market aggressively, they target children, they flood media with advertising, they hire influencers to normalize their products, and they sponsor research that creates confusion so that you doubt your choices. This is how scientific doubt is manufactured. This is how regulation is delayed. And when regulation is delayed, the profits keep rising. And the health costs keep growing. Now, in its defense, the industry says that there is, and I'm quoting, there is no scientific consensus on ultra-processed foods. But the Lancet research makes one thing quite clear: the world cannot wait for perfect proof. It must act today. And this should be a signal for governments more than anyone else. They should regulate the space better, with clear warning labels, limits on marketing and taxes on certain products. They must also ensure better access to fresh and minimally processed food. This has to be a policy move. So here's the question for all of us. Will governments put public health first? Or will the food companies keep deciding what the world eats? Because right now, the choice is not on your plate. It's in their boardrooms. If there's one thing humans are consistent about, it is this: we can fight over anything. Land, language, history, even a fruit. Tonight we're talking about the durian. In Southeast Asia, they call it the king of fruits. And now it's at the center of a dispute between two countries, Malaysia and Indonesia. Malaysia wants to make the durian its national fruit. It says the durian is part of its cultural story and that the fruit has supported communities for years. But Indonesia is pushing back. It says it produces far more durian than Malaysia and that gives it a stronger claim. But why is a fruit triggering national pride? And why does it matter who claims the durian? Our next report explains.
You may know it as the king of fruits, but in Southeast Asia, the durian is more than a fruit. It is identity, it is culture. And today it is at the center of a cross-border argument. Malaysia says durian is deeply connected to its culture. Every Malaysian reportedly has a story linked to it. Indonesia, meanwhile, is pushing back against that. It claims it has the stronger right to call durian its national fruit. So what is happening? This week, Indonesia's coordinating Minister for Food Affairs made a statement. He said Indonesia's durian production far exceeds Malaysia's. And he used numbers to make his case. Indonesia produced nearly 2 million tons of durian in 2024. It is reportedly the country's highest output in 5 years. And the fruit grows widely across Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan and Sulawesi. So he argued that Indonesia's output gives it a stronger claim to the fruit. Malaysia, on the other hand, is leaning on a different strength. It has premium varieties, Musang King, Blackthorn and D24. These varieties are in demand globally, and Malaysia's export value has grown because of them. This debate has now brought both countries' arguments into focus. Malaysia is trying to formalize its relationship with the fruit. Recently, the Durian Manufacturers Association in Malaysia submitted a proposal. They want the government to recognize durian as the national fruit. They also want July 7 to be declared as National Durian Day. The proposal says durian is deeply rooted in Malaysian culture. The association says every Malaysian has a story linked to the fruit. They say it has supported farmers and it has shaped communities. Malaysia has also secured protection for Musang King. Its geographical indication has been extended until March 2034. This keeps the name exclusive to Malaysia, and it reinforces the fruit's national identity. But Indonesia is not stepping back. It says national symbols must be based on data, its higher production and its diversity. Indonesia says it has 21 of the 27 known durian species in the world. It says 114 superior varieties have been registered so far. So where does this leave things? Both countries grow the fruit, and both value it culturally. Malaysia says naming durian as its national fruit does not stop Indonesia from doing the same. It says the aim is recognition, not ownership. It also talks about cooperation, because Southeast Asia is the heartland of durian. Indonesia, meanwhile, is building its argument on scale and variety. For now, the king of fruits sits at the center of a regional debate, a debate about identity, culture, and about who gets to claim a fruit significant to the region.
You know the first rule of social media? If it doesn't affect you, do not engage. But of course, most people don't follow it. And when people do engage, the internet does what it does best. It splits into two. Let me show you a post from entrepreneur Upasana Konidela. She just wrapped up a talk with students at IIT Hyderabad. She was curious about what young India was thinking, so she asked them a question. How many of you want to get married? That's what she asked, and to her surprise, more men raised their hands than women. Women, she said, were focused, ambitious and career-driven. She also spoke about freezing eggs, calling it the biggest insurance for women. It can help when they choose to get married and have kids. They can have that choice. And she posted this observation on X. She called it the new progressive India. But someone disagreed with her. Zoho CEO Sridhar Vembu, he replied to the post. In fact, let me quote from what he said. I advise young entrepreneurs I meet, both men and women, to marry and have kids in their 20s and not keep postponing it. I tell them they have to do their demographic duty to society and their own ancestors. I know these notions may sound quaint or old-fashioned, but I'm sure these ideas will resonate again. You already know why this is controversial. Marriage is a sensitive conversation anywhere in the world. It's especially tricky in the Indian society because here in India, it's not just a choice. It's an institution. It's a pressure point, and sometimes it is a battleground. So when a CEO asks young people to have kids, it touches a raw nerve. Everyone had something to say. On one side were the supporters who said that early marriage does give you stability in your 20s and freedom in your 40s. Life expectancy is higher, finance gets better with age, early companionship helps you navigate career chaos. The argument was quite simple. For those who want family life, the 20s can be a sweet spot. Of course, there were those who disagree. They say marriage has nothing to do with culture. It has everything to do with our economic reality. Today's youth face unstable incomes, skyrocketing living costs, zero work-life balance, and workplaces that penalize maternity. So marriage and starting a family amid all of this can be challenging, especially for women. Many fear it could derail their career in a precarious job market. And I guess that's the real issue here. It's not whether Vembu is right or whether Gen Z is selfish or whether late marriage is a Western import. The real question is, what does choice look like in modern India? Because marriage per se is not the villain. Neither is ambition nor culture. The villain is the disconnect between what society expects and what it offers. To the young, marriage may seem like a messy, daunting commitment. But it can also offer stability, companionship, growth, even clarity. Also, marriage is not a deadline. It shouldn't be. It is not an obligation owed to ancestors or GDP charts. If you want to marry at 23, wonderful. If you want to marry at 39, brilliant. If you never want to marry, that is your choice. Because the only right age to marry is the age when you are ready, not when society feels ready on your behalf. So Vembu's post may have touched a nerve today, but it has also put the spotlight on an important debate, a debate that India rarely has. The tension between tradition and choice, between expectations and autonomy, between what society wants and what you want. Maybe that's the real takeaway. That every individual deserves the space to shape their own life without scrutiny. Today is International Men's Day. It's a pretty divisive topic on the internet. On the one hand, it was created to highlight problems faced by men like abuse, suicide and homelessness. On the other hand, it's pretty ironic. Patriarchy has run this world for centuries. Actually, scratch that. Patriarchy has ruined this world for centuries. So do we really need a day dedicated to men? Along with an intense debate, it has also triggered a meme fest. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Israel's Netanyahu tours Syrian territory that is under Israeli control. Scientists build a digital mouse brain with 10 million neurons on a supercomputer, and a fully functional solid gold toilet sells for $12.1 million at an auction. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1977, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat visited Israel. He was the first Arab leader to do so. Sadat addressed the Israeli Knesset, their parliament, calling for an end to the Arab-Israeli conflict. In 1979, Egypt signed a peace treaty with Israel, becoming the first Arab state to officially recognize the country of Israel. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.